Welcome to another episode of Twisted Tales, a channel that focuses on the paranormal, supernatural, killers and sadists, but mostly just the downright sketchy stuff in the world around us. Today's episode delves deep into the mysterious catacombs under Paris. So please, sit back, enjoy and subscribe, but above all, don't fall asleep. The history of the Paris catacombs starts in the late 18th century, when major public health problems tied to the city's cemeteries led to a decision to transfer their contents to an underground site. Paris authorities chose an easily accessible site that was, at the time, located outside the capital, the former Tombe-Issoire quarries under the plain of Montrouge. In operation since at least the 15th century and then abandoned, these quarries were a small part of the labyrinth that extended under the city over approximately 800 hectares. Preparation of the site and the organization of bone transfers were entrusted to Charles Axel Guillemot, an inspector at the Department of General Quarry Inspection. The mission of this department, which had been founded on April 4, 1777, by Louis XVI, was to consolidate the abandoned quarries following major collapses of the ground under Paris in the mid-18th century. Catacombs in their first years were a disorganized bone repository. But Louis-Étienne Ericart III, director of the Paris Mine Inspection Service from 1810, had renovations done that would transform the caverns into a visitable mausoleum. In addition to directing the stacking of skulls and femurs into the patterns seen in the catacombs today, he used the cemetery decorations he could find, formerly stored on the Tombe-Issoire property. Many had disappeared after the 1789 revolution, to complement the walls of bones. Also created was a room dedicated to the display of the various minerals found under Paris, and another showing various skeletal deformities found during the catacombs' creation and renovation. He also added monumental tablets and archways bearing ominous warning inscriptions, and also added stone tablets bearing descriptions or other comments about the nature of the ossuary, and to ensure the safety of eventual visitors. It was walled from the rest of Paris's left bank's already extensive tunnel network. As Paris grew into its role as a major European hub, it eventually ran into a major problem by the 17th century. Enough people had lived and died in Paris that its cemeteries were overflowing, overstuffed with graves to the point when corpses and at times became uncovered. And so the solution arose to place them in the centuries-old tunnels that had existed beneath the streets of Paris since the 13th century. Remnants of a time when limestone quarries were mined to build Paris into a thriving city. By the time these burials ended, 6 million Parisians' bones came to their final resting place in the city's catacombs. Those living in the Les Halles neighborhood near Les Innocents, the city's oldest and largest cemetery, were among the first to complain, reporting the cemetery exuded a strong smell of decomposing flesh. Even perfume stores claimed they couldn't do business because of the off-putting smell. In 1763, Louis XV issued an edict banning all burials from occurring inside the capital, but because of the church pushback, which didn't want cemeteries disturbed or moved, nothing else was done. Louis XVI, Louis XV's successor, continued the crusade, also proclaiming that all cemeteries should be moved outside of Paris. It wasn't until 1780, however, that anything was done. That year, a prolonged period of spring rain caused a wall around Les Innocents to collapse, spilling rotting corpses into a neighboring property. The city needed a better place to put its dead. So it went to the tunnels, moving bones from the cemeteries 5 stories underground into Paris's former quarries. Cemeteries began to be emptied in 1786, beginning with Les Innocents. It took the city 12 years to move all the bones, from bodies numbering between 6 and 7 million, into the catacombs. Some of the oldest date back as far as the Merovingian era, more than 1,200 years ago. Beginning during the French Revolution, the dead were buried directly in the catacombs' ossuaries. Some famous or infamous characters from history who call the catacombs their final resting place include Jean-Paul Marat, one of the revolution's most radical voices, and Maximilien de Robespierre, an influential figure during both the revolution and the subsequent Reign of Terror. The city stopped moving bones into the ossuaries in 1860. In the 18th century, most Parisians were buried in communal graves on the grounds of their parish church. The graves were left open until they were full, a process that could take months. The bodies would break down over the course of 5 years, then the grave would be reopened, the bones extracted and moved to a charnel house, says Dr. Erin Marie Legacy, author of Making Space for the Dead, Catacombs, Cemeteries, and the Reimagining of Paris. The largest burying ground in Paris was Holy Innocents Cemetery, which had been in continuous use for over 500 years. As the city above grew, overcrowding became an issue down below, and by the mid-1700s, 1/10 of the city's dead were buried there each year. The living and the dead jostled for space, especially where the cemetery bordered the bustling Les Halles market. Historian Rosemary Wakeman writes, "Human decomposition mixed with the blood and guts of the market, with piles of rubbish to form a putrid stench, a dangerous effluence that made Les Halles an axis of infection and disease." French writer Louis-Sébastien Mercier warned that cadaverous miasmas threatened to poison the atmosphere of the city. He claimed the vapors soured milk and wine that was stored nearby, and that the cadaverous humidity of the cemetery's walls had the effects of venom. Miasmas can be roughly translated as contaminated air that was thought to spread disease, says David Barnes, author of The Great Stink of Paris and the 19th Century Struggle Against Filth and Germs. While germ theory didn't yet exist, it was common knowledge that people who lived and worked in areas near cemeteries or slaughterhouses would be subjected to such conditions. Notre Dame, Les Invalides, the Louvre, and many of the City of Light's most iconic buildings are made of Lutetian limestone, or Paris stone, which has been mined from quarries on the outskirts of Paris since Roman times. By the late 18th century, the city had expanded so greatly that much of it was built directly above the old mines, leading to unstable conditions. In 1774, a massive sinkhole in the Rue de l'Enfer, or Road to Hell, had engulfed houses, carts, and people, who fell over 84 feet to their death. Multiple sinkholes over the next few years caused panic and outrage. In response, King Louis XVI created the Inspection Générale des Carrières, or IGC, in 1777 to map and maintain the quarries. Chief Inspector Charles Axel Guillemot began a race against time to locate material to shore up the vacant mines. A growing public health problem provided the grim solution. During World War II, Parisian members of the French resistance used the tunnel system and established the headquarters from where Colonel Roland Tanguy led the insurrection for the liberation of Paris in June 1944. The Nazis established an underground bunker below Lycée Montaigne, a high school in the 6th arrondissement. The film As Above, So Below, released in 2014, was the first production that secured permission from the French government to film in the catacombs. They aimed to use no alterations to the environment, with the exception of a piano and a car, which were hauled into the catacombs and set on fire. During 2015, Airbnb paid €350,000 as part of a publicity stunt offering customers the chance to stay overnight in the catacombs, and in August 2017, thieves broke into a cellar from the catacombs and stole more than €250,000 of wine. The Cataphiles, a group of urban explorers with a penchant for spending vast amounts of time within the depths of the Catacombs of Paris for their own enjoyment and adventure. While they might sound like a modern-day cult, they are deeply respectful of both the dead and the tunnels, and create maps so that people don't get lost within the vast necropolis. They are insiders, and information about gaining access to the catacombs is kept within the tightly knit group. The Cataphiles have been creating and building their own community within the old quarries and tunnels for years. Some paint art, furnish rooms, or party with fellow tunnel dwellers, and some visit to simply disconnect from the outside world. Only one death has officially been confirmed in the catacombs. In 1793, Philibert Asbert, a doorkeeper for the Val-de-Grâce Hospital, died in the catacombs. It is thought that he had lost his light source, and was left to die in the darkness. In 1804, 11 years later, his body was found only a few meters away from a staircase that would have led to an exit. He was only identified by his hospital key ring and the buttons on his jacket. As one visits the catacombs, a sign above reads "Arrêtez, c'est l'Empire de la Mort." Stop. This is the Empire of Death. The Catacombs of Paris became a curiosity for more privileged Parisians from their creation, an early visitor being the Count of Artois, later known as Charles X of France, in 1787. Public visits began after its renovation into a proper ossuary in the 1814 to 1815 war. first allowed only a few times a year with the permission of an authorized mines inspector, but later more frequently and permitted by any mine overseer. A flow of visitors degraded the ossuary to a point where the permission-only rule was restored from 1830, and the catacombs were closed completely from 1833 because of church opposition to exposing human remains to public display. Open again for 4 visits a year from 1850, public demand caused the government to allow monthly visits from 1867, bi-weekly visits on the first and third Saturday of each month from 1874 with an extra opening for the November 1st Toussaint holiday, and weekly visits during the 1878, 1889, the most visitors yet that year in the 1900 World's Fair expositions. Later they opened for regular daily visits. After an incident of vandalism, the catacombs were closed to the public during September 2009, and reopened on the 19th of December the same year. The catacombs were reopened to the public on June 16, 2020, with new rules and guidelines for visitors as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Visitors are no longer required to wear masks. Apparently, the idea of heading down to the local swimming pool or using a friend's just isn't satisfying enough for some people. So instead, they'll take a trip down into the depths of the catacombs for a refreshing dip in some secret, unmapped pools of water which have become known among fellow cataphiles as impromptu swimming pools. Of course, you'd have to have connections to get to places like these. Reportedly, you also have to wade through murky waters and claustrophobia-inducing tunnels before you hit the oasis, which, in this case, is a swimming hole located in a giant underground graveyard. In 2004, police who were undertaking a training exercise in the catacombs stumbled upon something completely unexpected. When exploring a secluded area of the vast tunnel system, they discovered a giant cinema room, fully equipped with a screen, equipment, and a restaurant and bar, all facilitated by professionally installed phone and power lines. Spookier still was the fact that a secret camera was snapping photos of the officers as they passed into the entrance. Nobody knows who was responsible, and a note was left at the scene which read, "Do not try and find us." A practice began in the 19th century, when a Parisian named Monsieur Chambéry ventured down into the tunnels and observed a patch of wild mushrooms growing within a chamber. He decided to use the abandoned tunnels to begin growing his own Champignon de Paris, aka button mushrooms, a practice which was soon recognized and accepted by the Horticultural Society of Paris. Soon, farmers from all around flocked down there to begin farms of their own. Mushroom farming in the catacombs became a thriving business venture. In fact, if you know where to look, you can probably find some farmers still down there, growing mushrooms to their heart's desire. It does make sense when you consider the darkness and humidity down there. Who knows? The old bones lying around might have acted as some sort of fertilizer for the mushrooms too. The uncovered video camera is, by far, one of the creepiest Paris catacombs legends. In the early 1990s, a group of cataphiles were walking through the dark chambers of the ossuary when they found a video camera on the ground. The camera still had footage on it. As they watched, they heard disturbing noises. From the video, they could tell the man holding the camera was lost and had no idea how to escape. The more they watched, the more it became clear. The man was going mad in the underground network of tunnels. Getting lost in the catacombs is a real danger, as there are more than 320 kilometers or 200 miles of tunnels crisscrossing beneath the streets of Paris. It's a maze where losing the sense of direction is quite easy. A number of visitors to the catacombs have reported experiencing strange phenomena such as whispers echoing through the tunnels to weird apparitions vanishing into thin air. The catacombs are rumored to be haunted. The video ends abruptly with the man dropping his camera to the ground. To this day, no one knows who he was, or if he ever managed to get out alive. Many believe that the movie, As Above So Below, was inspired by this tragedy. Possibly linked to the video camera story, a famous Paris catacombs legend has it that something terrifying happens in the burial site after midnight. Keep your wits about you if you're inside the Paris catacombs after midnight is a common saying. According to this legend, that's when the walls begin to speak. It is said, disembodied voices will try to persuade you to venture ever deeper into the catacombs until you can't find your way out again. The catacombs of Paris are more than just a tourist attraction. They are a link to the darker past of human history. from the millions of bones that line its walls, to the eerie whispers that echo through its tunnels. Thank you for watching this episode of the Paris Catacombs. I hope you enjoyed it and subscribe for many more upcoming Twisted Tales. We will see you soon.